Hey everyone, it's Alex, and you're listening to the Everyday Stories podcast, a podcast about the everyday stories from the people you know and the people you don't know, here to help you learn a thing or two about life and the stories that define us. Today, we're talking to Tirhakah Love, a writer from Houston, Texas, with 12 years of experience and hundreds of pieces written across print and the interwebs. They started fresh out of college and jumped right into the late stage blog era with music and culture writing before branching out to TV, film, politics, tech, and gaming. After 12 years of writing, Tirhakah recently pivoted into marketing and is trying to make a name for themselves in yet another catastrophic industry. They also run a substack called Free Cable, a raunchy humor newsletter that reveals the dark arts and absurdity of the entertainment industry. Welcome, Tirhakah, to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Alex. This is dope. I'm pretty geeked. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, one of the first things that you told me about was you wanted to tell me about this story about being one of the first Americans in your personal world to know about Pokemon.
Yes.
And how it connects to you doing what you're doing now. So please tell me about that. I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I don't know how true this is, but I do know that like in 98, like maybe, yeah, probably around 1998. So my dad worked as a longshoreman at the port of Houston. And so I don't know if you know too much about like the port industry and like the workers and stuff like that, but if you work at a port, there's a good chance that you can get your hands on merchandise and like just things that come from different countries and just have access to them. Now, I'm not saying my dad stole. I can't say that right now. But if he did steal, it's fine. He passed on. Everything's fine. Like you can't arrest him now. He's good. Um, so 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 I'm a child of divorce survivor. You know what I mean? Shout out to my divorced kids. My mom started dating my stepdad, who I call my dad now, started dating my stepdad around 97. And, you know, me and my brother were kind of like, who is this guy? Like, yo, chill. Like, we don't know this dude. Like, it was definitely a moment of just like, suspicious. And I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I had already kind of.
You're just like seeing this man. You're like, I don't know who you are.
Who are you, dude? Like,
I haven't seen you before.
Exactly. Like, we're at his house. I'm like, what's going on? Okay, but so he needed to sort of make a statement. You know what I mean? He needs to like win us over a little bit. So I remember we were at his house. He was watching us, I think, while my mom was doing God knows what. And he pulls out this VHS of this very weird sounding like cartoon. And, you know, we pop it in and it's this preview for Pokemon. Like we see basically like this Joy, the voice of Nurse Joy comes on and starts talking about what Pokemon actually is. There's a drop of the songs, like the Pokemon rap song. Just explain catching Pokemon. They introduce Ash. They introduce Professor Oak, and this was in like 98, like 97, 98, like around there. And so I would go to school and talk to people. And no one knew what I was talking about. No one knew what Pokemon was at all. Whoa. But me and my brother had this VHS that we would play over and over and over again, and we just loved it. And it also played like the pivotal part of episode 1, where Ash is like trying to save Pikachu in the rainstorm, and all the Spearow come and they all attack him, and we are nerding out right now. So it is just this weird, bizarre thing. We also didn't have a lot of experience with anime, like that sort of cartoon. You know, I don't even remember, but I knew that was the first sort of piece of Japanese media that I had ever taken in, really. And yeah, it sparked that sort of nerddom interest to where me and my brother then just went crazy on Pokemon. Like we got everything. The Pokemon handbook, the Pokemon soundtrack that came out in like 99, I want to say, that I still know all the words to that soundtrack today in 2025. So it was massive. It's like a massive thing for us.
Wait, so many questions. First, where did your stepdad, like find the VHS tape with Pokemon?
I assume so. It was a piece of merchandise. Like it was Pokemoned out. I assume that he just skimmed it off one of these things because you have to, the supply chain of it all.
Yeah.
They're sending in this preview stuff for TV stations to sell Pokemon overseas, right? Because it started in Japan, and so they're trying to sell it in America. And this is like, I don't know if this is the first piece of English Pokemon media. I don't really know, but I do know that when I talked to other people about it, they didn't know what it was, and only me and my brother knew about it in our world, and so we just
Did
feasted on
you
it. Yeah,
do you still have the VHS tape?
I believe it's still in my mom's house in Houston.
Okay, because you could probably, if it's one of the first pieces of like English Pokemon, that could be worth something. That
You
is
know
like a
what?
coveted antique. I don't know what.
You know
But I would
what?
say just keep hold of that. Don't get rid of that because I feel like that is really important. Also, the VHS, did it just play Pokemon like the TV show and we're like playing episodes?
No, so it was like maybe 6 or 7 minutes of that first episode. And that was at the end. At the beginning, they played the theme song. You hear the voice of Nurse Joy explaining what Pokemon is. This is a Pokemon. Like it's that voice, that robotic voice that they play like in
Yeah.
between segments for the Pokemon episodes. That was a voice that we heard. They did one of the Pokemon raps where they just name Pokemon. It was a little preview. It was like a 30-minute preview of what you can expect a Pokemon episode to be. And then and they explained exactly what you're supposed to be doing. This is a Pokeball. This is where Pokemon live. Like it was
That's
it was dope.
crazy. That's you have to like almost you have to like digitize it because I'm so curious about like what was actually on that. But that experience of you discovering what Pokemon was and also telling everyone about it, how does that experience connect back to what you're currently doing or has inspired to what you're doing now?
I would say in two really, really real ways. The first is that there is this curiosity inherent to the kind of journalism that I do, that like I've always been a generalist. I've always thought of myself as someone who just has a lot of interest, and I love getting deep on something and nerding out and then sharing it with people. That's just generally what brought me into journalism in a real way. So being able to do that really, really early on, with this thing that felt so mysterious to me and to my brother at the time, and knowing that other people just didn't really know about it. It was really cool to have that knowledge, and just to when Pokemon did come out, we knew exactly what to expect. Like we knew
Yeah.
going in that it was going to be hot, that it was going to be dope, and that we wanted to be a part of that initial movement in the late 90s, right? And so it was awesome in that way to be a part of something cultural and to be on the ground floor of it. And I just love that feeling of finding something new, a new curiosity, a new interest that you think might take hold, and being able to explain that to other people who might be interested. And then the other thing is just animation. I just had, actually on the newsletter, I just had an interview with the co-creator of Common Side Effects, this animated show on Max. He also co-created Scavenger's Reign. And in that conversation, first of all, that conversation came about super randomly, but in that conversation, I'm just starting to realize like how much animation has shaped my life, like how much it allowed me to be a bit more understanding of the outside world in a way that sort of good literature is, right? It opens up worlds, it opens up new stories. And the commonalities that I felt with people who are in Japan, right? Who have seen a level of like trauma on the world stage, and who are writing through, animating through, creating through that trauma. And I don't know, I just felt that level of kinship super early on. And so, of course we nerded out, we did manga, we did the anime stuff.
Yeah.
But being able to talk to them about that actually reminded me just how much animation really matters to me. and how much the workers, the people who work on animation are super important to what we see. And it made me think about just like, do we have people that go to bat for them? Like, do we have people that really stand on the brilliance of animation, or do we have people who just sort of like, treat it like a kid's thing? And I'm just like, nah, man, like this stuff, the stories that are being brought forth through the medium of animation are super powerful. And I think they actually have more capability in reaching people because of that feeling of this is just a cartoon. But then that allows you to like suspend your disbelief for a while and be in that world, which can lead to like lessons about humanity, lessons about your environment, lessons about like how other people are living. So yeah, it's just a dope medium that really shaped a lot of how I see the world.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I was the kind of person that grew up like really, and even to this day, maybe controversial take, but I was so like anti-animation, anti-cartoon. Like, yeah, did I watch cartoons growing up? Of course I did, like any kid does. But for some reason, I was so deterred because I thought that animation as an adult, it was so much more like of that youthfulness and like fun, playful, childlike. I never realized that you could tell like truly raw stories that could bring like tons of emotion out of you and can be like very serious and almost like adult forms of animation until like very recently, actually. So it's so interesting that you bring that up. But also another thing that you brought up was you talked about how Pokemon and like under knowing and being part of that movement in the early stages, you love the idea of being at the start of these like cultural trends or cultural movements. And so I was wondering, basically, since the late 90s when you discovered Pokemon, has there ever been another moment, and especially since your like 12 years of experience writing in like that culture world, if you've come across anything where you've realized, oh, this is the start of something that could be really big?
Ooh, one thing off the bat that is more recent is I think this moment in hip hop is really something that I sort of scouted earlier on. As right now, I don't know if you know, we're like in the middle of like a sort of women's renaissance in rap music, and I feel like I've been a part of that to a certain degree, just chronicling their stories, profiling them, talking to them, writing about their music. And it's not so much that the music itself is vastly different necessarily. It's just that there's different degrees to which like a woman's voice can move on a record and what we're actually expecting from women when they rap. In the past, sort of the pre-Nicki Minaj, probably in her era as well, there's usually like two or three like rapping women who are on top of the whole thing. And I think after Nicki, and people will say that, Nicki opened up doors for people. She really didn't do that. But I think she didn't like that. But her like iconic sort of career did inspire girls to get into rap and I think that that's a real thing. But there's so much more space now for women rapping women to get into the booth and get their voices out, which is dope. The other thing that's happening is that they can dance, which helps because dudes who are rapping aren't dancing. And so there's like a level of showmanship, presentation, all this sort of stuff. And so, I peeped it like pretty earlier on, like mid 2010s, something like that. And just being able to ride through that has been really cool. So I would say that. I know there's one other one, but it just escaped my mind. But I would say those are probably the strongest. That's probably the strongest one I got right now.
I love that. And I know that when you first started your writing journey, you mainly focus on music and culture. And I wanted to ask why the music side of things.
Music was like, it just came to me. It was my everyday life. You know what I mean? Like, I remember in kindergarten riding with my mom and listening to Magic 102 on the radio in the morning and knowing all the segments and just listening to soul music from my mom's era. And it just became a part of my life. I would wake up to it. I would go to sleep to it. My mom bought me a radio super early in my life, and I couldn't go to sleep without listening to KRBE. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't go to bed without listening to 97.9 The Box. Like these were things that just sort of colored my life. And I played instruments growing up as well. So none of my family is really musicians, which is interesting. But music it was the center of my life for a long time, like thinking about these people who looked like me, just making incredible stuff that spoke to me, spoke to what I was living and seeing on a regular basis. So I just felt like hip hop sort of animated my life, and I needed to pay hip hop back for that. Like when I started writing for it, I was like, I have to give back to this culture. I have to give back to our people. So as I'm writing now, I still find things that are challenging in other sort of, I guess genres, like other sort of, like if I'm writing about film or TV, like there's still like a level of challenge to me that I'm like, okay, I still need to like be able to wrap my mind around. I've been doing it for years, but there's still things that I feel like I'm missing. With music is bread and butter. I can write about music all day. You know what I mean? Like you give me a topic, you give me an album, I can give you a good amount of words. I can do a whole thing on it. So it's just, it's home. You know what I mean? It's home for me.
It makes me think about a podcast that I used to listen to called Dissect, which is like, for those who don't know what the Dissect podcast is, it's basically a music podcast where they deep dive into albums or songs. And I remember listening to, they deep dive through Lemonade and then one of Frank Ocean's albums.
They did Frank Ocean, yep.
And it was just like analyzing every single beat and the way that like lyrics were set up or like certain instruments were added. It was like such a fascinating thing that like when I'm listening to music, I just want it to sound good generally. Like I don't think about all these little tones and things for the larger scheme of like what the song is trying to entail. So no, the music world is so fascinating, and it definitely like music transcends like culture, as does so many other things. But I love that you have sort of this like music aspect within you. I also wanted to ask you as well, throughout your writing experience, what article have you been most proud to write? Which is you've probably written a gazillion.
Yeah, I've written a lot. There are things that I've forgotten that I've written. The proudest one is probably this almost like a eulogy I wrote for the critic Greg Tate, who passed a couple years ago. And Tate was like got me into journalism for real. I was in school. This is at Williams College. Go Eve, sir, whatever the fuck. So this was in college, and my mentor was the department chair for the year, and mentioned that Greg Tate, who is this critic from the Village Voice, Black critic, been doing it, just one of the sort of like just fundamental critics that you have to read if you're going to do this, especially as a Black writer. That he was going to be teaching a course for the semester. They got him in on fellowship, and my mentor was like, "You're taking this class." And I was like, "Aye, let's go."
Yeah.
So I get in the class, and here's this dude who has made his bones just learning about Blackness and studying it and coining phrases that we still use right now in terms of what Blackness can entail, what Blackness can be. And I'm just learning from him. And every week I would look forward to doing that. And every week I would stay after class and talk to him more about things. And yeah, we would talk about everything. Like we talked about poetry and short stories, because he was doing a bunch of short stories on his Facebook and his website and stuff like that. These real surrealist things. We talked about Dear White People, which came out around that time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, awful movie. So we would just talk all the time. And I remember giving him some work and just being like, where do you think I could take this? This was like poetry work and some short story stuff. And he was like, it seems like you got the medium down, but what do you want to do? Like, where do you want to take it? Do you want to write How do you want to write? And as I went through the ups and downs of figuring out what I was trying to do in college, I found myself just being like, no, I actually just want to write to my people. I want to talk to my people. I was going to be a professor, but I was like, I don't like these people. I don't want to talk to y'all.
Yeah.
And so after a while, I got into freelancing. I started to do the whole thing. And I did that for a couple of months, just kind of gathered my bearings, unlearned academic language and stuff like that. And I just sent him an email saying like, hey, I really want to get into this. He calls me up. We talk for like 3 hours and, just give me the game on how to do this. And then he sends my work off to like 5 or 6 editors, just off the rip. Just, hey, here's a mentee of mine. Check out their work. It's good. Hopefully you'll like it. Like 2 days later, the Fader calls me. You know what I mean? And a couple of days after that, Entertainment Weekly calls me. And so that just kind of jump-started my career after I had written before that, but that really jump-started my being able to make money while writing. And so he passed a couple of years ago, and it just kind of rocked me for a while. And I got the chance to write just like a little remembrance of him for Vulture and New York Magazine. I think that was either my first or second piece for them. And it was just a nice way of looking back and honoring him just as my teacher. You know what I mean? As my mentor. Yeah, I miss Tate. I miss Tate a lot. I miss Tate every day. I miss that man every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Tate has made a huge impact on your life. And I mean, you probably made a really big impact on his too. But I've never heard of Greg Tate, and now I'm like itching right after this podcast. I'm like itching to like read more about him. So I'm glad that you mentioned that piece. I'm really excited to learn more about that.
He's awesome.
I also wanted to say too, who is the most interesting person that you've interviewed for a piece?
You okay?
I'm coming out with a question.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, I gotta go back in the memory banks.
Yeah.
Probably Regina King.
Oh my gosh, you've interviewed Regina King?
Yeah, me and Regina really hit it off, man. Like it was so we were doing the press junket for Watchmen, probably in 2018, 2019, I believe. 18, something like that. And I met her at a press junket, and it's just like you just run through the stars of the show, and I wanted to talk to her real bad. So I talked to her, and I was nervous because she's goated in my household. Like Regina King, yeah, like come on now, like come on. So she's goated. We had a conversation, and we just hit it off. We hit it off really well, and the back and forth was real good, and I could tell she was being herself because she was saying shit that I've never heard her say in a professional interview like ever. And I was like, that's gonna be between me and you, okay?
Yeah. It's off the record.
It's off the record. But this was such a fascinating time, because Watchmen was a thing, and I had all this background knowledge about Watchmen that I was bringing to her, and like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And she's like, you need to talk to Damon Lindelof. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so she helped me out in getting in contact with him. And me and Damon are like cool now. We send emails to each other every so often. But talking to her was really incredible because it just reminded me that, when you do celebrity work, it kind of gets annoying because you have to make celebrities interesting. I'm not going to try and badmouth anyone, but part of our jobs is to make their story sort of sing and to get people engaged with what they're doing. The other part of it is that if you have a particular critical lens towards celebrity and understand what the celebrity class is, it can kind of get under your skin a little bit. With Regina, she felt like a very just extremely genuine person. Like not just her, but her people, her team. And so that was really refreshing to me. And after that interview, her PR person came to me and was like, she doesn't talk like that to most people. And she wants you to come to California for the Watchmen premiere thing to have another conversation with you at George Lucas's big fucking Palladium, whatever it's called.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was shaking. I was literally in the press, just shaking, just yo, this is insane. And this is just me freelancing. Like, I'm not a person yet. Like, I'm not a, I was at the
Yeah.
San Francisco Chronicle for that, but I wasn't a person totally. I was shook. And so we did all the stuff, and we go to the Palladium, and it was an amazing experience. Apparently there was somebody lined up that HBO wanted, but Regina was like, get them out of here. And like hooked me up. But to wrap up the story, so what's fascinating about that day, I believe it's October 6th or 7th, something like that, of 2019. That was the day one of her friends passed, comedian. I'm blanking on the name right now. But damn it, he plays Homeboy from the Boondocks. I'll find it. But he passed that day, the same day of that interview. John Witherspoon. Why am I losing? John Witherspoon passed that day, and so Regina was late, and we had to sort of improvise. And the people at Max were like, "I need you to just go up there and go talk." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go talk for a little bit. We'll wait till Regina gets here." Regina comes in. She has a glass of champagne. I'm like, "Absolutely." And we run through the whole thing, and my family is there, and they're seeing, like, my cousins and my auntie are there, and they're seeing me work. I don't know if it's like the most interesting, but to me, it just meant the most to me. It was one of those times. It's one of the rare times that you get to talk to someone who is fully themselves, and then you get to talk to that person as they're like sort of reeling from a very tragic thing, because they were really good friends, and just seeing someone carry it, like seeing someone just like, hey, we have to do this. So here's the switch, let's turn it on, but also be fully present within that conversation. So yeah, it was a lot, but it was amazing. And I'll never forget that. I will never forget that.
Wow. That is so cool. I mean, I also think too, when you interview celebrities, you almost like, especially if you know them from like watching TV shows, movies, things like that, obviously you have like an idea of who they are, but it's a whole other thing when you talk to them, because yeah, they can put up a front, or they could like, I mean, you and Regina were like really getting into it. So it sounds like you truly made some sort of like move, or were able to get her to open up enough to like reveal more of who she was. And I think like that is because I also like studied journalism in college, and I think like the end goal is always like you want to try and get something out of the conversation that nobody else has. And sometimes that takes a lot of like social interaction and the ability to like quickly get people to open up without barely even knowing you too. So I think like you having that ability to do that and make someone feel really comfortable enough to just like really be themselves is truly when you get to like the heart of whatever piece that you're writing about. And that's why like that is why I also love journalism, is to like you get into like the nitty gritty of who someone is without not even like knowing them that well, but everyone has such unique stories to tell. And this is probably the reason why I even started the podcast in the first place too. It's like, I'm just so nosy. I want to know like who people are, because there are so many different perspectives that people have in the world. And so it's always so fascinating to talk to different people who are doing different things in the world, whether that's their career or just life in general. It's always so fascinating. But I also wanted to ask you too, so you were writing for a really long time in that whole like journalistic world, and then you decided to pivot to marketing, and I wanted to ask why.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things happened when I was writing. I found myself in the middle of controversies that I didn't feel like were very controversial. I was saying things that I felt like were just true. And you know, when the Israel-Palestine thing started to kick off, really, I said pretty frankly where I stood on things, and let's just say there were consequences for that. And I think after those consequences, I sort of like looked around, and something that really bothered me was that even if you couldn't say genocide, even if you couldn't say that, what you could say as a journalist is that they're killing journalists in Israel. And the silence around it was very hard for me to handle, because I got into journalism because I wanted to speak, because I want to tell the truth. I want to get to the heart of things and do it. And like you said, do it quickly. Like, just do it, you know? We can just say I feel like you could just say it like, hey, everything is sort of checking off the list of genocide here, or ethnic cleansing, or Nakba, however you want to determine it. All those things are happening. And I saw a lot of cowardice, and that bothered me. And what I found was that I was having a difficult time respecting the people in my industry and respecting my place within it. And that's just not a good place to be in when you're in a workplace, or when you're trying to be in an industry. You have to kind of have some level of respect for it. And I just lost it. And I'm an earnest person. And so I wasn't able to to put the blinders on, especially because journalism itself, to me, it's so close to who you are. Like, it's so close to like people, my type of writing, my opinion based stuff, my critical stuff. I'm putting myself out there. And so because it's too close, it was too intimate. The boundaries between what was work and what was like my principal politic, I couldn't, it was blurry. I couldn't do it. So I stopped. But I need to make money, and I need to figure out I need to figure out where my skills could be used. And I was just looking around, and I'm not like so sold on marketing necessarily right now, but I do like the idea that I can tell stories still. And I had to sort of reckon with the idea that, okay, you know, even as an anti-capitalist, like we're all having to sell stuff, and because we're in this country, because we're in the West, we live within the contradiction of imperialism, of capitalism, and it's just how it is. So, but with that understanding, it allows there to be some distance between what my personal politic is and what I'm doing for work, which is just a way to get money. So yeah, I'm into marketing now. I'm making content for the people, working with brands and stuff like that. It's very interesting. And it's such a wide industry. It's so expansive that you can just like find yourself doing a bunch of different things. And I haven't found exactly what it is that I'm going to sink my teeth in totally, but it's cool. Like, it's fun.
Well, it's so interesting that you, like, that was your pivot, because I also think too, like, the whole reason the journalism industry exists is so that we can tell it how it is. We can tell the facts. I mean, I remember when a lot of articles were coming out around like early October of, now was it like 2023? I can't even
2 years
remember. I remember there was a huge struggle about, just among like the journalism community, of how do we speak about this conflict? Like, how do we talk about it? What words were we allowed to use? And for a while, like, as you were saying, a lot of people couldn't use the word genocide. And still to this day, like, people aren't able to like say it across like a lot of news outlets. But I think like it is so important for like voices like yours and other journalistic voices out there to like, you need to have these like wide ranging, like, not opinions necessarily, but perspective on how you're viewing a situation. And that goes back totally to like media literacy and making sure that you're not just relying on like a Fox News and just reading all of the bull crap that's coming out of there, but you're just like, you are consuming different types of media and forming your own perspective and opinion from that, because that's the only way, like, as humans, we all have different perspectives about every single situation out there in the world. And like, it is our own due diligence to like do that work and like read all about that. So I'm glad that you spoke up, and I'm sorry that, you know, like the cowardice and the silence around that like wasn't well supported on your end. But I think like voices like yours are like extremely important, and need to be supported more so than anything else. So I think there are still ways that you can do that within marketing, because I also work within marketing. You just have to be like a little bit more pick and choosy about that too, because you're working with like brands and things like that.
Yeah, totally.
The last thing I wanted to get into was, I know that you started a Substack called Free Cable. One, how long have you been writing on the Substack, and why did you decide to start it?
Yeah, I think I started maybe 5 or 6 months ago. The Substack. Um, I knew I needed to write. Like I'm a writer. I have to do it. It's just I remember when I first started freelancing, and there's like these little moments if you're really freelancing and it's like your shit, like what you do. There's always gonna be moments where you're like asking yourself, why am I doing this? Um, should I be doing this? And sorry about that. Should I be
You're
doing
good.
this? Is this healthy for me to do? Because because freelancing is not for the faint of heart. Um, but I learned back then that like I'm a writer. I'm gonna be writing anyway. I might as well write for and be able to pay some bills. With Substack, I started Free Cable because of that lack. I think the entertainment industry specifically, I'm like well versed in it now. Like I've done so many things within it. I've been able to write criticism and profile people, talk to the people who work behind the scenes, and it just seems like people who are just viewers, who are just audience members, might not have the full story about why things get made or how things get made, and just the levels of absurdity that take place behind the curtain. And I just want to expose some of that, just lift the veil on it a little bit. Free Cable was Free Cable. The name came from my people stealing cable in
I
the
kind of
90s.
love that. That's
Yeah,
actually it's such a good name.
yeah, we just stole cable. You get your wires, you got your cable guy in the neighborhood, and handle business. So yeah, it was just sort of subversive nature of it, and I wanted it to be funny and entertaining to people. Um, for their 5 minutes that they're reading it, they can get a laugh and then go about their day. But yeah, it's going well. I'm like still in the midst of like figuring out all the things that I can do within it. And so that's the exciting part for me. But no, I've been really enjoying it. I've been really enjoying it. Free Cable's dope. Everyone should like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, Free Cable. And last question for you is what is something that you've learned in the past year that you're going to take into this new year of your life?
Ooh, um, a community, a community is not convenient. It's not like it's not like you're gonna like everyone all the time in your community that you've built. Um, and hopefully you built it in real life. But it's actually very, very inconvenient. It means going out of your way to be of support and to do something for someone else without any expectation that they're going to get you back like immediately. But you can trust that when you're in a situation that someone's going to have your back. And that means, stepping out and doing more for people than I think a lot of influencers, mainstream, whatever, however you want to call it, more than what they would teach you to do or to be. You have to kind of do more for your fellow person, your fellow human being.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Well, Tirhakah, thank you for hopping on the podcast. I like to end each episode with a quote. And I wish I picked a different quote, but this one is still so silly. This one is still so silly, but it is most rock journalism, like rock as in rock. Most rock journalism is people who can't write, interviewing people who can't talk for people who can't read. And that
No,
was from a guy named Frank Zappa, which
Frank,
I
yeah.
don't even know what to think of the quote now, but I just thought it was so silly based off of like the bio that you sent me.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I kind of love this. And then our conversation took a whole different route. But anyways, that's the quote that we're ending off with. Thank you
I love
again
it.
for joining the podcast. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate it. It was fun.